What's up, Journeymore? Should you carry a firearm while you are hiking or backpacking on the trail? That's the question that we're going to answer today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started.
Hey now, take a step outside and seize the day now.
This topic is controversial. It's got two sides. Both sides have valid arguments. So what I want to do in this video today is give you all the arguments for each side and also give you the necessary information that you need to know in order to make the best decision as to whether or not to carry a firearm on the trail. Before we get into those two arguments, we have to consider two things above all else. The first one is the law. The law varies state to state. Depends on if you need certain permits or whether or not you're allowed to carry it in national and state parks in the first place. So you have to check on those laws. You can call the national park that you're wanting to go to. You can call the visitor centers. Whatever it may be, you've got to figure out what those laws are and what you need to do if you do decide to carry a firearm while you're on the trail. The second is training. You have to be well trained and very comfortable with your firearm before you take it out on the trail and begin to use it, especially in certain situations where your adrenaline is pumping and your mind is running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Because in those situations, very different than if you're just shooting a gun at the range. So you have to make sure you have proper training, the proper permits, all of those things before you even consider the arguments as to whether you should or should not. Now, let's jump into those arguments. We'll start with the side of you should carry a firearm. The first argument is protection against animals. This is probably the most obvious argument, the one that people bring up the most. If you run into a bear or mountain lion, it could mean life or death for you whether or not you have a firearm, because you could stop that animal in its tracks before it gets to you and does serious harm. Second argument is protection from other humans. If you run into somebody on the trail who has the intent of harming you or those around you, if you have a firearm, again, that could be life or death. And then the third argument is a survival/hunting situation. So if you do get lost and you are having to survive, having a firearm does give you a tool in order to take down an animal for you to have food and to be able to continue to survive and eventually get out of there. Now let's look at the other side. The first argument as to why you shouldn't carry is you don't actually need it for the protection. If you run into an animal like a bear, firearm really should be your last resort. If you don't know what to do when you run into a bear or when you're being attacked by a bear, you should jump over to our two videos that go through those scenarios and what you should do. Again, a firearm should be your last resort in those situations. Something that has been shown to work better against a bear is actually bear spray. This is a can of Frontiersman Bear Attack Deterrent. This is very easy to shoot. It has a nice wide range. And this is something that anybody can use that's going to provide that protection, that's going to deter a bear if it is charging and attacking you. We'll leave a link to this in the description below. This is one of the top options out there for the amount that you get in the can, the actual range of the spray, and then the price as well. Then that other piece of protection, protecting against other humans, it's very, very unlikely, very rare that you'll run into another human that wants to do harm to you or those that are with you. And so there's very few cases of murder or anything like that on the trails. And so most likely you won't have to use the firearm. But again, if you're that 1 in a million chance, if you don't have the firearm and something happens, you and others will wish that you did have it. So again, that's something that you have to think about. The second argument is the law. Again, this can be tricky, especially if you're doing a trail like the Appalachian Trail and you're going through different states. You could get into some legal trouble if you don't have the necessary permits, and if you're just not allowed to carry in that area at all. It can be a headache when you're planning a trip like that and considering carrying a firearm. The third reason as to why you shouldn't adds weight, and it can be very uncomfortable to carry on the trail. Usually when you're backpacking, you're trying to strip out every ounce that you can, and a gun like this, even though it's a small concealed carry weapon, this is still going to add multiple pounds to your pack, which can be very uncomfortable while you're on the trail. Those are the three main arguments for both sides. We hope that this was helpful and it gives you a lot to think about as you make this decision. Again, first and foremost is making sure that you know the laws, you have the permits necessary if you do decide to carry, and then also that you have the proper training and that you are comfortable using this gun. Again, you are liable for every bullet that comes out of that firearm. So if you do not know how to use it properly, it could be life-altering for you or others around you. So make sure you be very careful. A bonus little tip here, if you do decide to carry, if you're putting it into your pack or somewhere where the trigger could be accidentally pulled, make sure you put it into a holster. Just like this. That way the trigger's covered and there's no way for it to accidentally fire. But I'm not here to be your gun instructor or gun expert. That's not what we do here. But this is a topic that we wanted to bring up and that we wanted to talk about just because we have had people ask about it, and it is something that everybody wants to consider. With this being the USA, you've got the choice to choose. But with that choice comes responsibility to be wise and to protect those around you. Again, we hope this was helpful to you. If it was, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'd love for you to be a part of the Journey More community. Come journey more with us. We'll see you next time.